Hey, well, hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartree here today with another episode of the Simply Inspired podcast. And I'm very blessed, very honored today to be welcoming a very, very special guest with a truly inspiring life story. Today's guest, Michael Martin Humel, I hope I'm pronouncing all of that correctly, who has some incredible sporting achievements. And this is something you don't hear every day, people. So listen up, 57 medals in wheelchair racing, swimming, and basketball, with 40 gold medals, 13 silver medals, and 4 bronze medals. I mean, wow, that is something that you really don't hear every day. So, as always with my interviews today, it's not just about sports, but this is all about inspiration, hope, and positivity. So, stay tuned. And Michael, as I've already said before we started recording, but I'll say again, thank you so much for coming on the show, and it's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Uh, I've been looking forward to this.
Well, I'm glad. Well, so have I. So have I. I've been looking forward to it very much since we booked it. So we have a lot to talk about, but with yourself and your life, let's start at the beginning. Now, I don't always start at the beginning with every guest, but with yourself, let's go back in time. Where did you grow up, and where did your life begin? Yeah, let's go back in time first of all.
I was born in Long Island, New York, in 1978, and I like to tell this story because it's important to what I want to accomplish. The doctor who examined me told my mother that I would never walk, talk, feed myself, dress myself, and I should probably be institutionalized. And not a lot was known about my disability at the time. I have spina bifida, and thankfully they didn't do that. And my gratitude is like centered at my parents for not doing that. And my mother told me that story when I was 16, and I could still see the fear, well, the sadness and the hurt in her eyes and in her voice, and it made me feel small, insignificant, and less than other people who are able-bodied. And my mission is to end the stigma of disability and hope that no one ever feels small, less than, or unequal ever again.
It's a beautiful message. I mean, that is what a wonderful message to give to the world. Well, thank you for sharing that, first of all. And I always say to people when we do these interviews that I always appreciate people sharing such personal things, because I'm sure you've told your story a lot, but it's brave nonetheless. Whether I'm not sure if you see it that way. So okay, so you were born with this condition, and by the way that you've described that with your mother, I would imagine, although I am guessing, that they took steps to make you feel less insignificant and unwanted and what have you. In other words, they refused to buy into the labels and the stigma. Your parents now, I mean. Am I correct in saying that?
They took care of me. They looked after me. They did everything for me. I didn't tell them how I was feeling
Mm.
or what I was thinking. So I think that went by the wayside, and they thought everything was fine, but I just hid my feelings. So they took care of me, did everything for me. But I just wished, as I went older, I was like, as I got older, that I was pushed more to do things, and that was part of why I felt like I did, was because I wasn't a lot of things weren't expected of me, which in the long run became a problem.
Imagine that it would. So, with regards to that, then, talking about your upbringing a little bit and talking about some of the processes that you went through in terms of sort of painting a picture of this for people, um, everything from schooling to tasks around the house. When you say that things weren't expected of you at that time, were people catering to your needs um, from the sound of it more than you would have liked them to then?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Um, like I said, when I was younger, my mother did everything for me, and they didn't expect me to do anything, so that I felt like that stunted my growth, my emotionally and like intellectually. And while I was in the first 10 years of my life, I was in special education,
Mm.
and I was in a school with other disabled kids. And then when I was 10, I got mainstreamed into this other school, and I was the only kid in a wheelchair. And the only thing they had to do was, and this is before any of the laws for advocacy or accessibility, which is great. They built me that was bigger than all the other kids, so I go commendable. But like I said, having everything done for me has hurt me in the long run, but also made me stubborn. And now I want to do everything, even if I can't do everything. So I just do it, and then I'm the type of guy that will do it again. Yeah, so that's what I do.
Absolutely. Well, so with regards to when you were growing up, were there people that you looked up to, or people who gave you some form of initial inspiration that you could go on to achieve great things as you have done? I'm curious to get to the seed of um, where that idea started, of where you went from the process of um, having a lot of these things done and what you've described to thinking, actually, I can I can do something great with my life. Because the thing is, when you say about stigma and everything like that, I really don't like labels. I really don't like any labels. Even the label um, itself, disabled itself, I don't necessarily like, because the thing is, people internalize labels. So when I was in school, personally, I had a lot of alleged diagnoses for dyslexia and ADHD and various things, which, my parents rejected. And the reason I tell you that is, as I understand from a different perspective, the damage that being labeled as something negative can do. So I'm curious how you got through the process, or where the seed of that inspiration started of actually, I can do something big in my life. Maybe it was in childhood, maybe it was a lot later, but in your own words, that would be wonderful to get into, please.
I think it was a combination of a few things. My father is my hero. He used to be a cop. He was a cop for over 20 years. He throughout my childhood and most of my the beginning part of my adulthood, he had 2 to 3 jobs constantly. Mother took care of me very well. I looked up to him, and then when I was 10 years old, I started in two things. I started playing wheelchair basketball, and I started doing the New York State games for the physically challenged, and they had a league. The games were basically like Olympic games for the physically challenged, and it was wheelchair racing, shot put, triple jump, shot put. I mean, the javelin throw, and that introduced competition in me and made me want to do more. So those three things are where my desire to do more came from.
Absolutely. So that was what lit the fire inside of you, shall we say, to achieve everything that you've achieved. That's wonderful. The inclusivity of that process is wonderful. Was there, if you don't mind me asking this, when you were growing up, when you were involved in sports, was there sort of the ability for you to meet more people, connect with more people and everything? Because I can imagine, and forgive me if I'm off track with this, but I just want to ask you that, um, especially in the mainstream school, maybe there was a little bit of marginalization or stigma. Now, just to be clear, with these interviews, I never dwell on anything negative. It's all about how people have overcome things, not about the nitty gritty of what happened. But I could be, like I say, I could be off base. But perhaps then, did the sporting side of things give you more confidence and more connections and make you more outgoing, or was there not really a change there from before?
Well, yeah, it definitely made me more outgoing because it was, other than the school that I went to when I was a kid, it was one of the first times I actually felt like I belonged. Like being being on the team with disabled kids and being going to the games for disabled kids. And actually, I also went to a camp for handicapped kids, so that gave me a lot of sense of being and sense of connection and wanting to be around people, wanting to talk to people, and wanting to get out and do things. And so that helped a lot. And it's funny, when I got mainstreamed into the new school with no disabled kids, I was hesitant to think about what was going to happen. And funny thing is, one of the first things that happened is whenever I would go to recess, the kids always wanted to push my chair, and they always wanted to play with my chair, which is kind of one of the reasons why I don't like when people push my chair now. But yeah, it was, having that was a very uplifting and changed the way I looked at things, definitely.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a beautiful thing, really. So you started, as you mentioned, quite young with this process of competition, from quite a young age. So all in all, how long have you actually been competing in competitive sports? If you say you started at 10, I think you said you started quite young. So you've obviously been competing for a number of years now. How long are we looking at that you've been involved in some form of competitive sports altogether?
I'm not doing it anymore. I started when I was 10, doing the basketball and the wheelchair racing. Um, I did it on and off for about probably 30 years. Um, it depended on what there was out here, because I did the racing from age 10 to 19, which was 88 to 97. And I stopped doing that because the age limit was graduated high school and I was done. But I kept playing basketball on and off in different teams. And then when I moved to Vegas, they didn't have any wheelchair racing out here. So I stopped doing that. But I did play on a few basketball teams here and there. But overall, in total, 30 years on and off.
Remarkable, absolutely amazing. The dedication and everything that it takes to do that for such a long time. To consistently perform at a high level for such a long time. It's amazing. Obviously, with everything you've achieved, with, as I mentioned, 57 medals and everything, it would be cool to get into some of your personal favorites in terms of some of your highlights, some of the competitions that stand out for you. I know this is a big question, and I would love to ask you about all of them, but we'd be here until next week. So I thought, well, okay, we can't do that. So the best thing to do is really to get into some of the ones that mean the most to you and the reasons why those ones in particular mean the most to you. Maybe there's one, maybe there's many, but as I say, I know it's a big question, but in your own words, please take it away with that one.
Yeah. Um, a few of them stand out. Though I always said that the last year that I competed in the games for the physically challenged, I was going to wear all my medals. So at the last day, I showed up with all my medals, and at that time it was 53, and I won 4 that day. And so I showed up with the 53 on, and I actually got in the newspaper. Somebody, a journalist was there, and he wanted to interview me, so he interviewed me. That was fun, and that was one of my standout moments. Um, Another one was at the end of that tournament, or well, at the end of that weekend that they had the games. We had a basketball tournament, and it was basically like a championship of the basketball season. and we won three in a row for that. So that was a lot of fun. And then also getting the captain of my first team was awesome, and really special to me. And it's funny. I've fallen out of my chair a few times. Express the game, you're not doing your job. So I think my work ethic in that team, in that game, was important, and that helps people. And also in 1997, I got picked to go on what was called the Irish Youth Team. 15 kids flew from America to Ireland and did Olympic events. And I did 3 wheelchair races and 1 swimming event. And we toured around Dublin. We went to different historical sites and zoos and castles and things. And I got to meet the ambassador from Ireland to America, who was Jean Kennedy Smith, John's sister. And I'm a big history buff, so that like freaked me out. And so that was a lot of fun. And yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, those are the most important.
Those are your highlights. Amazing. Well, I love asking that question because, frankly, you never know which ones are going to come up and why, So it's got that like a lucky dip concept of, oh, I wonder which ones. Amazing memories, amazing achievements. Um, Talking about Ireland, that makes me think actually, is there a favorite place that you have competed, or a favorite place in the world, or in the USA itself that competing has taken you to, if that makes sense? I mean, there might not be anything that stands out, but I was just wondering, obviously travel is, I guess it's a perk of your many years of competition. So are there any places that stand out with that?
Well, when I got to go to Ireland, that was a lot of fun. And I was 19 at the time, and the drinking age was 19, so I got the drink. So that was a lot of fun. And it was in Ireland, so we were in pubs every night. And there was and then I got to I got to compete in New York because I did the Olympic Games, and I played basketball. I toured around different states, like to travel and play in different states like Arizona and LA and stuff like that. Um, the funniest story about where I traveled to, though, was when I went to Ireland. We went to this one pub. The girls, it was her birthday, and her favorite song was Help. So I got to sing Help very badly in front of a pub of complete strangers, which was one of the most fun things I've ever done.
Oh, that is wonderful. Well, you know, um, it sounds like an amazing trip, and Irish people, they do love to sing, they do love to drink, and they are very warm people in general, I would say. Where I am in Wales, it's very, very similar culture to that. So you have some idea, but it sounds like an amazing trip. And I can see, your face lights up as you relive those memories, which is a wonderful thing. Yeah, like a lot.
It's okay. Sorry.
No, no. What were you saying? I could hear the start of a cool story there, but it cut out. So
Uh, I just said that we were in Dublin and Wexford, so and it was beautiful. It was a lot of fun.
yeah, it is. It's an amazing place, a beautiful country, and I'm not sure if I froze up as, oh, if what happened there, but I was just saying where I'm from in Wales, the culture is actually very similar to Ireland. It's more like Ireland than England, if you like. So that gives you some idea. But it is. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. And all I was saying at the point it froze was, if you had a favorite sport between the different sports you competed in, if you ever had a preference, or if you enjoyed them all equally to each other.
If I had to put them in order, I would put them in wheelchair basketball, wheelchair racing, and swimming.
Mm.
Because funny story, uh, I used to do wheelchair racing and wheelchair basketball and swimming. And this on the same day was the basketball tournament and the swimming. So what I would have to do is go in the pool, do my
Yeah.
okay.
Because I stopped that just so I can cut them together a bit easier. Right. So not to get to anything too personal here, but you mentioned earlier about the fact that you're married, I believe. Now, with the only reason I bring that up is a destigmatizing concept. I mean, I'm not being funny or anything when I say that, but it's a lovely thing that people see. I'm not going to use the word disabled, but people with difficulties can still be loved and appreciated in the same way. Now, I know that's obvious to you, and I mean that as a destigmatizing question. I wasn't sure if to even ask it for the fact it doesn't sound
Yeah.
stigmatizing, but I actually think it'd be a really cool story for anyone else who's out there who feels isolated and feels that that might not be possible for them if they're um in a, say, like your younger self, if you were talking to someone who's in your shoes when they're growing up, if that makes sense. So how did you two meet, if you don't mind me asking this?
We met on a website called geek2geek.com. It's a dating website. And we had talked. She knew I was in a wheelchair because I sent purposely pictures of me in the chair so that she saw it, and she didn't bother her at all. I lived in Vegas and she lived in California, so we didn't think we were going to meet. Uh, she messaged me, told me how much she liked my smile, and that was it. And then we started talking and being friends, and over time we just got closer and closer, and that's how it happened. And then in 2018, she moved to Vegas, and then we got married a year later. And a lot of people think that she's my caregiver or my nurse, which is uh, it's weird to think. And then I, I, I bothers me, but it is what it is. So yeah, that's how it happened.
Well, that's a lovely story, beautiful story, actually. I must admit, quite heartwarming. Thank you for sharing that because, um, like I said, I mean, if other people see this, which I hope they will, who are sort of in your shoes, like your younger self type of thing, then they know that that's possible.
Yeah.
And I mean that with good intentions. Last couple of things then. When it comes to destigmatizing any type of condition really, what advice would you give to people who are out there who might be feeling at this point in time stigmatized, isolated, less than, or any of those feelings that come from, unfortunately, people's judgments? What advice would you give to those people to sort of feel more empowered, more confident, more whole, if they are feeling marginalized or stigmatized, or what have you, if you get what I mean with this?
Yeah, I would say my tagline for what I do is start a conversation to end the stigma. So I would honestly talk to people, reach out to people, get involved, find out what you love to do and do it, and don't stop. Uh, don't close yourself off. Meet people, uh, show them that what you can do, which will in turn end the stigma and get them to relate to you better and understand you better and know you better. My favorite compliment I've ever gotten, I've gotten it a lot, but my brother was the first one to give it to me, so it meant more to me. He told me, sometimes I forget you're in a wheelchair, and that still gets me emotional because how impactful it was. So just reaching out and getting involved and meeting people and answering questions, uh, letting them know you and what you can do, what you can't do, and just letting them know the etiquette of what you need help, uh, you don't need help. This is what you do if I do need help. That kind of thing.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Does make a lot of sense. It's a powerful message, and obviously that's for people who feel marginalized, breaking down the barriers. If we flip that on its head, what can people do in these situations, like what you said there, when you need help, when you don't need help, and everything? What steps can able-bodied people take to make people feel less marginalized if they are in a wheelchair, or how can they handle things that little bit better, basically, in your opinion?
Well, again, start a conversation, ask them questions. Uh, if they need help, if they don't need help, don't help them, because I've been in situations where people who are not disabled have asked me if I needed help, and I said no, and they've done it anyway. Like, I've been pushed in my wheelchair when I didn't want to be pushed in my wheelchair, and to me, that's a personal space issue. If you don't know me, don't touch me. And I get you're trying to be nice, and I appreciate that, but at the same time, it's just not something that you should do. I mean, I don't go around touching able-bodied people when they don't want to be touched. So, like talking to people and getting to know people and finding out what they want, so that that stigma can be broken down, and what can they do to help them. That's important.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can understand the two sides of it and how that's a two-way street, but it's very important to start that dialogue and get people talking. As I mentioned earlier, I don't see people as being defined by any one thing. I mean, never mind being able-bodied or not able-bodied or whatever, but when we meet now, I don't just define you as, say, an athlete. You're not only an athlete. I mean, you have lots of different facets, like you said earlier, about the history, and like you're a husband and you have other things that you do. There's a lot of facets to people, and I think that taking that sort of non-linear view of another human being as not being defined, say in your case, just by the chair, but there's a lot of different facets to you, and starting breaking that down is a powerful thing, because a lot of judgment comes from, personally I feel, comes from the sort of surface, only looking at the surface, if you like, or judging a book by its cover. So it's important to break that down. We've talked about some good things today, and coming towards the end of this, a couple more things for you. First of all, future plans, things that you're sort of working towards, you're inspired by, things that goals that you have that maybe have not been realized yet, but you're working towards realizing those goals for the future. I don't mind how far ahead in time we go. Obviously, the breaking down stigma is a goal and is something you're working on, as you've mentioned it. But in terms of other things that you would like to accomplish over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, however far or close or far you'd like to go, I don't mind.
Well, I want to write a book. I'm a blogger, but I'm also, like, I've been writing short stories and poems since I was a kid, and so I really want to be a mystery novelist. I came up with a couple characters uh, because, well, the inspiration is my father, because he was a detective. So I wanted to write a few mystery novels about, like, characters I created. So that's a big one. Um, and just I want to go on a cruise. I went on a cruise for my 40th birthday, so I want to go on another cruise next year. My wife and I are going on a like a wedding expo, because we want to renew our vows. So that's another one. And yeah, that's about it.
Some nice goals for the future, though. I like that. And closing this out, really, because we've talked about some good things today. Are there other people in your life that you would like to thank? I often close these out by uh, giving thank yous, because there's a lot of people helping people behind the scenes. And obviously, you've mentioned your parents, your father, you've mentioned your wife. Are there any other people that have helped you along your journey that you'd like to give a mention to before we wrap this up, just so they can have their name, or have we covered everyone so far?
Well, yeah, my wife, thank my wife, my parents, my brother, my first, two of my physical therapists back in New York, Patty Antoinette. They helped me a lot. And Tonette was one of my first basketball coaches when I was like I said, 10 years old. And my favorite English teacher, Miss Gaspari, was very instrumental in me liking like words and English and writing and things like that, because it was very uncensored. It was like write whatever you want. There wasn't much censorship on that. And my editor in chief in college was a guy named Phil Strum. He's a friend of mine to this day. He's really helpful. Yeah, that was about it.
It's brilliant. That's lovely because, as I mentioned, obviously they've helped you and they know who they are, and you're connected. But from other people's point of view, they are effectively behind the scenes. So giving them a shout out is just something I like to do. And last but not least, if people would like to reach out to you and people would like to sort of contact you directly after hearing this interview, ask for advice, get to know you, whatever, obviously you're a very open individual, hence I contacted you out of the blue from thousands of miles away, and you were like, yes, let's hop on a call. So, but seriously, if people do feel isolated or they do want to reach out to somebody who understands what they're going through, that being yourself, how can they do that, basically, for anyone who doesn't know?
My email is Michael Humel at wheelsandwarriors.com. That's wheel the word wheels, the letter N, and then warriors.com. I'm on Instagram at wheels_N_warriors. I'm on Facebook as Wheels and Warriors. And yeah, those are the three main places to find me. And my website is wheelsandwarriors.com.
Absolutely amazing. Well, I hope that some people reach out, and for people listening to this, please do if they want any advice, if they'd like to contact you, if there's any way you can speak for them like this, and just get the message out there. That's the reason for putting that in there. But I basically at this stage, I'd like to just thank you for your time, Michael. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for being an open book. Bearing with me with the time difference, well, in terms of being slightly later than I said, bearing with the whole internet connection thing, all of it, it's been absolutely wonderful experience, and I'm just very grateful to you for making the time for that, really. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.